cancer,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer,
Good evening once again, and welcome to our live Doctor on Call program. Every Tuesday evening at 8:30, we bring you this very special program, of course, where we try to share with you information that can be helpful to your health. This evening, we're looking at sickle cell disease. Yes, this week, sickle cell awareness, and so we will be talking quite a bit about that. Also, we have a very special guest with us, yes, Miss Denise Roberts, and in a little while you'll hear a little bit about her just before we get into our discussion. Dr. Nixon's with us as always, and of course we welcome all our viewers on GBN television, our friends on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also our listeners on K105 FM. It's a pleasure as always. So I tell you what, let's welcome first Dr. Nixon. Dr. Nixon, good evening and welcome again. I don't tell you welcome back because I usually get words.
I haven't been anywhere, so I'm always, Godfrey, I can't see you. I'm seeing the GBN logo. Good evening, Grenada. Good evening to all our friends who are everywhere. I want to say a special good evening to one of my friends, Nai, who looks at us every week, and to those seniors who listen on the look at transistor radios or on the thing, who meet me and say, I watch you every week. Just to know that we value our audience and who participate in ways when they see on Australia, they tell you what they learned and stuff. Remember, we want to remind people that you have to learn at least one thing from this program and share it with your family or your friends or your neighbors, because this is all about getting better. So good evening and thank you to Sickle Cell Awareness Week. Yesterday was World Sickle Cell Day. Although it was Juneteenth, it's also World Sickle Cell Day, when we focus, not that we don't do during the year, but we focus in a little more intense way on sickle cell as a challenge, especially to people who look like us. We know that sickle cell is more common in people of African extract. It does not mean to say that other people don't have sickle cell. And then you may also look one thing and really be something else. And that is something we're going to talk about down the road. But I want to introduce my friend and classmate, Denise Roberts. Well, I was just thinking about it and saying that Denise, I've known Denise so long, I almost feel like I know Denise before I know myself. But Denise is a Grenadian. Like I said, she's as Grenadian as maybe Saltfish House. As Plum, because Denise comes from down in the south and I come from the northeast, and I remember she would bring me plums and I would bring her mango when the seasons went. So I want to welcome my friend Denise, who went to Anglican High School, is a nurse of I won't even say your age, Denise. Over 40 years experience as a nurse, very retired recently and returned home. So don't mind the English accent, you come from St. George's. So Denise, I want to welcome you. I know you're a very avid listener, but Denise is also a volunteer on the Sickle Cell Association of Grenada. So welcome and thank you for the service you've been given since you returned.
Oh, thank you very much, Doc, and thank you for having me on the program tonight. And a good evening, good night to our viewers and listeners, and to Godfrey.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for having me. As Doc stated, my name is Denise Roberts, and I'm glad to be able to be part of the program. A little bit about me, as Doc said, I recently returned home from the UK after 4 decades. I trained, my parents were part of the Windrush crowd that went out in the late 50s, early 60s, and I came home last October permanently. I joined my parents in 1980, having decided to experience what life was like in the UK, and I trained as a registered nurse, which was 3-year training, and then I went on and trained as a midwife, delivered quite a few babies during that time, and then went on to do drug trial research, which I've been in for the last 3 decades, all the COVID trials, etc. So it's been a good journey, but I'm home now, and I joined the Sickle Cell Association while I was in the UK, and was able to come and meet my colleagues and the family face to face in October when I came home. So I'm glad to be part of the Sickle Cell Association and to give something back. And so hence the reason for me being on the program tonight with Doc.
Right,
So
yes, indeed.
Enlighten you a bit on what we're doing and how we're doing.
Oh, definitely.
Godfrey, we can't see you now.
Well,
Keep seeing the logo.
let me see what's happening here. Are you able to see
me now?
Are you able to see me now?
Oh boy, you're so cute. It's not even funny.
Well, I'm happy. Actually, that was my error there. I thought I had my camera on, but it was off. So I apologize for that. But yes, we're here, folks. We're talking sickle cell, and it's a pleasure to have Mr. Roberts with us. And I'm sure a lot of information will be coming out tonight. So let's start, as a friend of mine would say, let's start from the start. Sickle cell. It is Sickle Cell Awareness Week. I'm sure there are people who probably don't know what we mean when we say sickle cell. So I think this is a good place to start. And let's start with our guest, Ms. Roberts. Sickle cell. Tell us a little bit about sickle cell, what it is, and then we can go on to heritage and all of that.
Okay, thank you. First, I would say sickle cell anemia is one of these inherited disorders. You cannot catch it from anyone. So let's just get that straight, okay? Mm-hmm. You cannot catch it from anybody. It's an inherited gene that you get from one parent, and you have it for life, okay? Now, it's really quite apt, actually, because at the moment, the new moon is at a crescent shape outside. We don't want you to go and look now, but we want you later on to have a look at what the new moon looks like, okay? Now, when we say that you have sickle cell, we have sickle cell anemia. We have sickle cell anemia and we have sickle cell disease. It's an inherited disorder that you get from one parent. One parent will have the gene, and you have inherited that gene. And the reason I'm keen on it, involving it in sickle cell, is because it's close to home for me in terms of this actual disorder. Your red blood cells that goes around your body, it's shaped like a disc. As we say, it's round and it's shaped like a disc, whereas for the sickle gene, it's shaped, as I said, if you look outside, and I don't want you to go now, it's shaped like a sickle. It's crescent shaped. So you end up with pointy ends instead of having a round disc shape. Okay? Now the sickle hemoglobin lasts, with your oxygen being carried to the rest of your body, it lasts about 120 days. Whereas with the sickle shaped gene, it lasts between 10 and 20 days. So you end up being very tired, very anemic, because this blood cannot go around your body the way it should do into your veins and your small arteries. So you end up having quite a lot of challenges with it. As I said, you cannot catch it from anybody. It's something that it's inherited from one parent.
Right, wonderful. So Doc, we coming to you. We've heard many times that sickle cell was first discovered in a Grenadian. You're the doctor. You're the physician here. So
I know. It's what you're saying. It was first discovered in a Grenadian. I mean, like it sounds like we started sickle cell. We did not.
So then,
right. Like Denise explained, it's a disorder that you get from one or both of your parents. They may have the genes, and you may get one from each of them, or you just may get one, or just even if your mother has the one gene. Remember, your parents have to have two genes. One may say yes, one may say no in relation to the sickle gene, it is the sickle cell. So you may get one from your mom, and you may not get anything from your father. You may not have sickle cell. Okay. But sickle cell manifests itself mostly in people of color, of African origin. There's a story related to that and preventing malaria and all the rest of it. But we're not going to go there. We know that black people and tend to have this disorder a little more. It is a disorder of the hemoglobin. The hemoglobin is that protein in your blood that carries oxygen, and hence you also heard I mention anemia. Anemia means that you have low hemoglobin. If you have low hemoglobin, it means that you have little capacity to carry as much oxygen as you need. So there'll always be swelling. There's always shortness of breath. You always feel very tired. You always feel listless. There'll be failure to thrive. To grow as you should. Depending on whether or not you have one gene or two, whether you get one from your mommy and your daddy, or you get one from mommy or one from daddy. Okay. Now, people with sickle cell disease is what we really worry about, but it's important to know that a lot of people, 1 in 15 persons, actually have that gene in our population. We're going to talk about looking for the gene in a little while. Heritage. In the 1920s, a young man by the name of Walter Clement Noel left on a ship to go up to America to go and study dentistry. By the time he get to Boston, I think is where they went to port. He was very, very ill, had an ulcer on his ankle. Nobody ever seen that, but of course you think about other things like beriberi and stuff that sailors will normally get. We know that traveling that time was mostly by sea, so he might have been 3 weeks on the ocean going to Boston. Well, I hope not so long, but he was on the ocean for a little while. He got there, he went, they kind of fed him up, give him a lot of vegetables and blah, 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 and he went up further up north to medical school, to dental school. But every so often, Walter Clement Noel, and I'm going to ask you to go and read about it, because this is part of our heritage. That is where Grenada, one of the things that Grenada stands out first in the world, okay? Walter Clement Noel will get sick every so often during school. Stress. You know how students at university don't eat right, you're running, you're studying hard, you're not, all the rest. He started getting sick. And one very smart medical student, the whole serendipity of it, decided he's going to look at the blood cells, which is a thing they did a lot because research was still, very in its initial stage. It wasn't very advanced, it was simple. So they'd always look at patients' blood cells. And they noticed that Walter's cells, his red blood cells were clumping together, and they looked like these little hooks, these sickles. Like the sickle and that the Arabs use on their flag, that hook, the sickle that we used to cut wheat and stuff. The cell, that was the shape of the cells because a protein is missing, right? One amino acid is missing, is displaced in the composition of the cell. So it looks different from a regular red blood cells. Okay, so red blood cell. And they noticed that Walter had these kind of sickle shape, these C-shaped cells, like a new moon shape, and that the cells clumped together. They had never seen that before. And here we had patient 0. And that was the beginning of research on sickle cell. Because here was this guy with this. Walter actually finished dental school and came back to Grenada and died relatively young, in his early 30s, as would expect. Because people with sickle cell disease, a full-blown disease, meaning that he had gotten a gene from his mom and a gene from his dad. The truth is, Walter may have been a very light-skinned person, because in them days, black people don't go away and study dentistry, and they don't have money. So he might have been of a wealthier group, but he may have been mixed on both sides, right? Hence the thing. So Walter died in his 30s, and he's now buried at the Sutton Cemetery, and is remembered every year by the Sickle Cell Association, and he's mentioned globally as what we call patient 0, the first person to have been discovered with the disease. So that's our heritage.
Right.
I think, therefore, the fact that we have research starting with us, we kind of need to know what's our own status. So how I stay, what's going on in my life, okay? And we want to know because sickle cell has its own challenges, right? Denise talked about the cells breaking down. Normally, red blood cells, yeah, they break on themselves, right? They will die. Cells in our bodies die. Regular red blood cells die 90 to 120 days, right? Red blood cells die up 30 days if you have sickle cell. So you have these very unstable cells. And so when you look at people with sickle cell, because the hemoglobin breaks down, they tend to be yellow, they have jaundice, right? But if your body has to keep on making cells, you have to be in a interesting state of health to be able to make back cells, but you're not, right? It's important, therefore, that you know whether you have that challenge so you can do the things that are important to stay well as you can. People who have just one gene acquired from a parent may not have as severe problems, but they might feel the tiredness. What do these cells do? When they clump together, these red blood cells, they clump together. So instead of being able to move, and we've spoken about diabetes and how these red cells can move, right? Like when you're making a pizza, they're very pliable. They can bend and go into little space to carry oxygen. They can't do that, first of all, because they're shaped differently, right? You can't really get a hook to move around as quickly as you can get a flat, soft, something that moves, right? And circular, right? And then they clump together, and what they do is block the small blood vessels. So people with sickle cell, even some people with trait, always have a lot of pain. They can have pain, right? The fact that they don't get a lot of oxygen. If you know people who have sickle cell disease, they're very thin and they're long, their bones are longer because you have these bones, we make blood cells in our bones, and you have these bones that are working overtime to try and provide more and more bones. So they have longer bones. Everything is just long because these bones are working overtime to produce more cells because there's so much breakdown, right? So pain is one of the most prevalent features, most common features in people who have sickle cell. Pain, joint pains, pain in their tummy, pain in their chest, because we know that people with sickle cell disease have what you call sequestration syndrome, where these red blood cells get into your lung and clog up your lung, and it's a very painful thing and it's potentially fatal. Some people get a lot of pneumonias, but most of the problems that people have, the clinical problems that they have with sickle cell and disease in particular, is because of the clumping of these cells that occlude, that block up, that clog up our blood vessels. The vaso-occlusion syndrome of sickle cell disease. That is where the problem is.
Right.
Hence.
So before we go on, to talk about sickle cell and symptoms and signs and treatment and all of that, World Sickle Cell Day. That was on
yesterday.
Yesterday was World Sickle Cell Day.
Monday.
Yeah. So, Ms. Roberts, can you tell us a bit about the World Sickle Cell Day? What was the highlight, or was there a theme? What was done this year for that?
I can speak for what's been going on in Grenada because, of course, we have our Sickle Cell Association, which started here 17 years ago, 2006, been set up, and it's come together by a group of volunteers. We try our best to educate the Grenadian population in terms of sickle anemia, because it is a form of anemia. And we've had health fairs. It's been a huge promotional drive to educate our people to know their status. So from the UK, I know there's a big society in the UK Sickle Cell Association in the UK, but in focus for us with the World Sickle Cell Day has been a Grenada focus. For example, today at the ministerial complex, there was a health fair, which again, trying to educate our population to know your status. For example, what we're trying to focus on as well is the folks of, like should we say, childbearing potential. I know we have stated, and I've heard across the Caribbean, that we haven't got enough babies being born. in the region to look after our elderly folks later on. So I know St. Lucia was pushing, the Ministry of Health in St. Lucia was pushing to have, encouraging women to have at least 2 babies, to have at least 2, to try and boost the number of people for the population. In Grenada, part of our drive is to educate our folks in terms of their status. Know your status, as we say. If we're having these health fairs, and we are seeing quite a good amount of people come in and interested to know what's actually happening to them. I think we had 238 people screened so far for the first 6 months of this year, because we've had a number of health fairs to educate people on what sickle cell anemia is, sickle cell trait, as Doc mentioned. It is of, people of African, Caribbean descent, but we do have a lot of mixed marriages today, and we are seeing it across the board. So we're encouraging our people to come, get tested, especially those who are going to plan a family in the future. Know your status, because if you're sickle trait and your partner is sickle trait, there's a 1 in 4 chance you can have a child that has sickle cell disease, and that is a lifelong burden, should we say, from the time that child is born. All right. So from a Grenadian point of view, our drive is to promote health education. Know your status. Know what your sickle status is like, because all of the antenatal classes you'll get checked at that stage, and all the babies born in Grenada have the sickle test done at birth, so that you're followed all the way through. I think from the 238 persons who were screened so far this year, we've had 25 positive sickle cell traits.
And that reflects the percentage.
Yeah, and 2 sickle cell disease. So each of these health fairs, we're driving from a point of view for Grenada. If we can get on top of sickle cell anemia in Grenada, people know their status, I think we'll be well on our way to try and stay on top of this really dreadful disease. Because you have a sickle cell disease child, that child is followed all the way through from the cradle to the grave with the association, because something that we've been driving from 2000 or 17 years ago since the association started.
Right. Doc, let me just come to you. Ms. Roberts is saying that it's important to know your status. So, all right, you go to the doctor and test is done, and yes, you do have sickle cell. And then what?
You who, girl or boy?
Well, let's start with the boy first, and then we'll go to the girl.
And I agree with you 100%, because so there's a part of our population that's not screened at all, because screening started a few years ago. Screening at neonatal screening at birth started just a few years ago. So there is a part of our population that's not screening. It is routine for us to screen all pregnant women, so we know. So should you test positive for sickle cell, that is, if you have it, yes or no, you send for another test, which is called an electrophoresis, to know if you have just the trait, just one gene, or both you have a gene from your mom and a gene from your dad. At the same time, your partner is supposed to be screened. But guess what? Car's gone through the gate already, because you're already having a baby. What if he's positive? What if you understand? So it's important that we know. That is why I put in the emphasis, because in other societies, like in the US, for example, they do marital counseling, and marital counseling includes a lot of diseases that can be passed on genetically, to say what are your odds, so people are prepared for the possibility of having XYZ. Or just because you might be marrying a person who has autism, you'd want to know that, wouldn't you? The potential for your stuff. But certainly diseases that can be passed on to your children, you would want to know. So we are trying to figure out if everybody, especially our males, know their status, right? And so people can speak to each other in an informed and responsible way. Here is the challenge. Here's my challenge, right? Also, because having full-blown sickle cell can cause some serious problems in the male. Okay, remember that thing about blood, having arteries clogged and that thing, you can have challenges that are very serious to me, which we can talk about a little later. But you really want people to know what their status is. It's just like knowing whether you have diabetes or not, whether you have hypertension or not, you know? And this is not something, as Denise said earlier, this is not something that's going to change, right? This is not something, that's like being a boy or girl. Even if you change what you look like, you're still boy or girl genetically. So we kind of need to empower people by letting them know. It also gives people a chance. I'm going to give you, I always have a story, right? Years ago, when I was working in another jurisdiction, a lady came to me, I guess, to check her blood pressure and stuff. I said, "Oh, what about your uncle? You had an accident?" She said, "No, she was in her 60s. She was a retired teacher." And she says, "No, every so often, I used to have a little sore break." I said, "Really?" But this lady had no children, right? She married a little older. Her husband had already had his set of children, and she became their mother. So I said to her, "Let's do a sickle test on you." Perhaps she had sickle cell, but she just had sickle cell trait. But she was 62 years old before she even knew. And she was having this little wound that would come up and heal, right? But her body was able to take care of it, right? She would bandage it tight and stuff, and she'd be fine. Recently, I saw a man of East Indian extract. He said Indian. His mother is Indian, his father is Indian. You don't have any mix-up, as far as I know. But the Indian population also have some of those what we call hemoglobinopathies, pathology of the hemoglobin, right? They would have sickle cell, but they would also have thalassemia. So I saw him, and he said he was tired and little stuff. And I said, have you? He said, well, they told him he knew as a child he had sickle cell, but this is a man who works hard and never had an ulcer, never had anything. And I swore that he probably had sickle cell with thalassemia. They had told him he had sickle cell, but nobody had ever sent him to do an electrophoresis so you can look at the genes and say, yes, you have, this from your mom, this from your dad. Guess what? He had full-blown sickle cell, but worked hard, did not have a lot of the things we see. So we kind of need to know. I don't remember if his children had gotten checked, but he's aware that they've had sickle cell, but they're Indians. Pure Indians, no mix-up. Okay, so the truth is, knowing your status will make a difference. Because I sent him to the hematologist, the person who diseases of the blood, because his hemoglobin was a little low, right? But other than that, here's a man has gone through 60 years. Most of the people who have sickle cell, full-blown sickle cell, actually can be quite ill, right? He who does farming and other laborious who are building, plumbing, one of those jack of all trades kind of person who's exposed to a lot of heat, a lot of dehydration, which we beg our sickle cell patients not to allow themselves to be exposed to, because once you get dehydrated, it means that there's a greater potential for those cells clumping. But he's been living a normal life and then some. Okay, so it's important to know, because one day he might just come, get a big sequestration, symptom, the chest syndrome, and die, and nobody would understand. Oh, but this man actually had sickle cell. So it's important to know exactly where you are, especially if we know our children. We can help support parents emotionally and otherwise. We can help them to guide them, make sure they take their medications, because there are medications that help with symptomatology, right? They have to get the pneumonia shot to prevent themselves from getting pneumonia and all the rest of it. So that is why it's so important to know exactly what your status is. And of course, like we've been talking, for your participation in the whole procreation jamming.
Definitely, and for us in Grenada, all the babies born are screened at birth, and not Grenada alone, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. They're all screened at birth, and they are followed through if they do get picked up having sickle trait or the disease, which is the full-blown thing. From the cradle to the grave. And, there's a health record, because, of course, they're going to need extra care. They're going to need to be seen. People are going to need to be a little bit more tolerant, to the symptoms. They're tired. They don't want to go to school. They don't feel well. And it's a real burden for parents with sicklers. And I think in Grenada, we do a very good job in following through these babies, as I said, from birth in Carriacou and Martinique, and they get tested, and there's a health record book that they have to use all the way through, their lifetime, and when they become youngsters and adults, and so we're followed all the way through, and it is really important, I think, from what we're trying to do, and the whole association is looked after. We try our best. It's voluntary. It's all volunteers, and everybody try and pull together and share their knowledge. People who've retired, to try and as we say, give back to our society, really.
Right.
Because it is not a very nice disease at all for anyone to have, and our aim is to educate and ensure people know their status, and to try and get on top of this preventable diseases, as we've got high blood pressure and diabetes and so on. This one, you're born with it. You cannot catch it from anybody.
Okay.
But if you know your status and you're going to hook up with somebody, two sicklers coming together with a trait, and a trait could have a child with a disease, a 1 in 4 chance.
Okay. Let's.
You're trying.
Right, Doc. Let me just bring you in again. We're hearing about the sickle cell trait and full-blown disease. Let's clarify that here. What's the difference?
So you get a gene from your mom and your dad. Let's say they have sickle cell, right? They're going to give you one gene. So your mom let's say dad has full-blown sickle cell. He has, and this is your hemoglobin, okay? So he has a normal hemoglobin, right? And if he has full-blown disease, his hemoglobin has you have two genes, right? Everybody that represent a trait, a feature, okay? So if he has full-blown disease, it means that he has 2 genes, right? And he will give one to the child, right? Because the child gets a gene from the mother in relation to the hemoglobin, and one from the father, right? So he will always, if he has, because let's say the gene is S, as in Sonia, okay? Daddy will have SS if he has full-blown sickle cell disease, okay? If mommy doesn't have it, she will have A as an adult, at least F as first and A adult hemoglobin, okay? So I will end up having A from mommy if she's AA, and S from daddy because he's SS, right?
SS, yeah.
If daddy is SA, I'll probably get either S or A from daddy. And I could get only A from mommy because that's all she has, A and A, right? So I have a 25% chance of getting the trait. In other words, to have the full-blown disease, you have to have the S gene twice. Once from your mom and once from your dad.
The dad.
Right.
Okay? You have to have a gene, get a gene from your mom and a gene from dad. Remember, they have 2 possibilities, right? And it depends. So if both your parents, let's say both your parents had just the S gene, and S and A, right? They are carriers. They just have sickle cell trait, right? The possibility you'd either get an A from mommy and an A from daddy, or you get an A from mommy and an S from daddy, or you get an S from mommy and an A from daddy, or you get an S from mommy and an S from daddy. So you now have a 25% chance of getting full-blown sickle cell disease. Okay? Right. That's what you would have had. Hopefully you'll get AA, all right? That's what you would want. The odds are greater.
Right.
But you also have, if both of them have the carrying the gene, you also have a 50% chance that you will be a carrier as well. You will have the S gene that you can pass on to your children. Right. And that is why it's important to know what you are, what your possibilities of sharing it in the future.
Right.
Does that clarify to you?
Yeah. No, I have another question. But just before we go to the break, so in terms of how that individual feels,
the person with sickle cell?
Yeah, the person with sickle cell. So let's say, we're talking here about 2 individuals individuals. One has the trait and the other one has full-blown disease. So in terms of how, so in terms of how you feel, and I'm looking here at some of the symptoms. So you have anemia, episodes of pain, you have swelling hands and feet, frequent infections.
That's a person with full-blown disease.
Right, fantastic. So we understand that. So someone who has a trait now, what would
may or may not.
They may or may not. But in terms of intensity, is there a difference? If they do?
Yes. The person with a full-blown disease can be very ill and can be very ill from very early.
Right.
Because remember, those cells clog and they can clog arteries. So you can have sores, ulcers, you can get strokes, you can get heart attacks, and those kind of things. So diseases that people with sickle cell have, full-blown sickle cells. So when we talk about sickle cell disease, we talk about people who have a gene from mommy and one from daddy. So when you look at the hemoglobin, they don't have hemoglobin A, which is adult hemoglobin. They have S and S from both parents, one from each parent.
Okay, wonderful.
Right? And the sickle cell disease is a hard thing to have to carry through life.
I know. One last question before we take the break. Someone who has a trait, can that trait develop into full-blown sickle cell disease? No,
because that's what you are. You can't change. The way you're born is what it is. So once you're found, you do what we call a qualitative test, yes or no, and then we do quantitative analysis to figure out whether you have, how much of you have, do you have on either gene and stuff.
Okay, wonderful. So let's take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk with Ms. Roberts a little bit more about the Sickle Association, what they do, and how can they support people who are in this condition. So stay with us. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
Omega XL is a highly concentrated omega supplement in a small and easy to swallow capsule. It comes from green lipped mussels, which are sustainably grown in New Zealand, away from pollution and civilization. These mussels contain EPA, DHA, and over 30 free fatty acids that together fight pain and inflammation. Omega XL contains 22 times more free fatty acids in an easily absorbed, bioavailable form, which means one small soft gel of Omega XL has greater inflammation fighting and pain relieving power than 10 capsules of standard fish oil. This is your moment. The moment to live life at its fullest. Don't let your pain get in the way. Get back to an active life. Omega XL really works.
Don't wait to find relief from inflammation. Get Omega XL at your local pharmacy or health food store today. You have nothing to lose but your pain.
Grenada, get ready for the biggest Calypso clash of all time as Grenada takes on Trinidad at the 17th annual Hubbard's Legends in Concert. Saturday, July 8th, Grenada Trade Center from 7:30 p.m. You'll get from your our partners, Hubbard's, Grenada Paper Products, Granville Credit Union, Biden and Miners, Gittins Healthcare, Grenada Broadcasting Network, Guardian General, Spice Isle Imaging Center, Western Union, The Agriculture Shop, Clear Vision Eye Center, Springs Food Mart, Dollar Savers Auto Part, Rise and Shine Supermarket, Classic Lighting, Victory Bar, Budget Marine, Dean's Mattress, Grenada Trade Center, Creative Do It Best, Grenada Distillers Limited, Catwheels Stationery Service, Blue Bubbles, PA, Rentals and Event Supplies Company, Dana's Tasty Food, and City Inn. Please be seated by 7 p.m. because this one will be epic.
Drug abuse, cancer,
measles, diabetes.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Doctor in Call. In case you joined us late, we're talking about sickle cells, and our special guest this evening is Miss Denise Roberts. She's a registered nurse, and of course she's with the Sickle Cell Association. Of course, and the association, they do provide lots of support for people with that condition. So, Doc, I have a question from one of our listeners on our WhatsApp platform. The question is, so she says, I'm a full-blown sickle cell patient and I had a daughter 2 years ago, but her dad doesn't have it. My question is, does she have a trait because I am full-blown, or would she get it, or is it compulsory that she gets it? She said they did some tests, but to date they got no information. So she wants to know whether or not that child will have full-blown or just a trait.
If the dad does not have a trait, the child can only have a trait. He gets one gene from his mom and a regular hemoglobin gene from the dad.
Right, but the mother says that she's full blown,
and she should really try and get a thing just for her comfort, because I'm surprised. We try to advise people who have sickle cell disease not to have babies, because pregnancy on its own causes so much thickening of the blood. You get a lot more cells and stuff just to be able to take care of that baby.
Mm-hmm.
Having that predisposition, the possibility of having your cells clumping is a challenge, and we worry about pregnant mothers having severe complications like strokes and thrombus, clots in the veins, in the lungs, and other places. So I'm happy that she's gone through this, and I hope it was nothing great for her. But that's why we need to know before. So
I think the concern she has, the fact that tests were done and she's gotten no information. Ms. Roberts, anything that the association can do to assist in this situation?
Well, from our point of view, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, we facilitate the testing of anyone who wants to get tested, because we have the health fairs and we encourage people to come along to get tested. Now, the fact that her daughter, did she say her daughter?
Yes, her daughter.
Her daughter they should get the daughter tested again. I mean, we have got a number that we can share with you from the Sickle Cell Association that she should come.
She would have been tested in the 2 years, or maybe when the child was born, we weren't tested.
Depends how.
There was a slight hiatus. There was a time when no testing was going on. So, if the father is negative, it's quite unlikely that the child has full-blown disease.
And she's not showing any symptoms of anemia. We don't know. I mean, they probably need to look into this.
If the child had sickle cell, she would have been sent to the clinic, to the Sickle Cell Association Pediatric Clinic. You guys are going to have to speak. I'm having fabulous rain, so I'm going to have a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very good.
She said that the child was tested at birth, but she did not get any information. She said I went back to the health fair to get her tested again, but they didn't test her, claiming that she was tested at birth already. So I'm not sure what's up.
I'm going to be presumptuous and say, if the child's father did not have sickle cell or any other trait, the child is unlikely to have full-blown sickle cell disease.
Okay.
But she
even if the mother, and that's even if the mother has full-blown sickle cell disease.
Yeah.
Once the mother has full-blown, she will get a gene from the mother, and one gene makes you a trait.
A trait. Okay. So you need the two genes to be full-blown. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. She has to get it from her dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she probably has had a fairly. She's been tested at birth. She probably has had a fairly normal, in inverted commas, life. And she seems okay. But at the same time, we're doing it in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, so that as we said, all the newborns are tested. In the last 10 years, I think, we started doing that and being followed through, and providing counseling services for the children of those tested positives. What's happening with us at the health fairs, if you have the blood test done, it goes to the lab. If the results are negative, they're not going to get a call to say it's negative, because we tell them at the health fair, if your test is negative, you may not get a call to say it's negative. If you're positive, we're going to make sure we follow you up. But if it's negative, it's okay. Then we warn them. If you don't hear from us, it's okay. But during the pandemic, of course, things change, and in the last few years, we're sort of playing catch up at the minute, because of course the pandemic created a whole lot of chaos for us all in many ways. But we're playing catch up, and we've had annual distribution, trying to get things to the families who got sicklers. They get food hampers, we provide flyers, we provide educational material to them. As I said, the association started 17 years ago in 2006.
Right.
So it has been going for some time now, and in collaboration with many other NGOs, schools, religious institutions, groups, because when we do have these health fairs, it's not a sickle cell health fair. It's a combination of many people pulling together, like the one today. We do have one on the 28th of June at the Foodland car park on the Lagoon Road. Mm-hmm. So again, we welcome people to come along and get themselves checked. And we also recognize, we have the Sickle Cell Week, where we have these radio programs to try and educate people as to what it's all about. Sickle cell anemia, it's something that it affects so many members of the family if you have one person who's not very well. And it's not a nice disease to have at all if you have the full group.
Right. So yeah, there's a comment on our Facebook platform from one of our viewers, and she's saying, my boyfriend has full-blown sickle cell disease, and it's not an easy thing to deal with. It is a constant battle with crisis and fatigue. However, it is not the end of the world, and with the right diet, adequate rest and water, and some natural supplements, it's easier to manage. She says that the ginkgo biloba and ginseng works well for him. So just sharing that. So
there's a drug called hydroxyurea.
Yeah, hydroxyurea.
And hydroxyurea actually prevents what we call the agglutination, the sticking together of cells. So what we find is that people remain healthy longer. They get less crises. The pain and the wherever you're going to get a clot, the challenges are smaller. So we are seeing less and less. And of course, parents are happy that their children are not being ill, especially parents who are not involved before. One of the things that Sickle Cell Association does is have a monthly clinic for children, one in St. George's and one in St. Andrew. We've had a couple clinics in Carriacou, but that is left still to be established on a regular level. We also about again with the Ministry of Health to establish adult clinics, because there are a lot of adult sicklers out there who have nowhere to go. And of course, sickle cell is a chronic disease. What is a chronic disease? A disease that you don't have a vaccine for. That comes on and lasts for more than 3 months. This is going to last all your lifetime. That if you don't take care of it, you have to, caring for the disease is related to lifestyle practices. So drinking a lot of water, resting, not exhausting yourself, making sure taking your medication, getting a vaccine, your pneumonia vaccine every year. Those are the things. But it goes on. If you don't take care of yourself and eat properly, you will not do well. If you do not take care of yourself and practice the behaviors that are required, drinking a lot of water, getting your vitamin C, getting your folic acid. People know what they need to take. Taking hydroxyurea, those are practices. You will be always ill. And still, even some people taking that, but the minority might still be ill. But at least there are ways to attenuate this big chronic syndrome where people have always had disease or have illness and can't work. the objective of managing or supporting people who have a chronic disease is to get them to live as natural, as normal a life as possible, right? So if we can stop people from we don't want our children to miss school. We don't want adults to miss work. We don't want them to miss family events. We don't want them to always be in bed and depressed and ill and in pain. No, that's not what we want. We want people to be as normal as is possible, even if they have a long-standing disease that's going to be with them through life. And above all, like Denise mentioned earlier, we want them to know about the disease. So there's education and there's interaction, support from other people who have the disease and stuff, right? That is Sickle Cell Association facilities.
Right. Mrs. Roberts, another question for you. And I know you did speak a little bit about some of the things that the association is involved in. In terms of actual support for patients, so people who they feel unwell very often, and so on and so forth, do you provide any kind of support along those lines? Probably people who cannot afford the medication, do you provide any of that kind of support? And I mean, also keeping in mind that I know it's difficult to, to generate all the revenues that are required to do what you may want to do. But tell us a little bit about, some of the additional support that the association provides for people with sickle cell.
Well, Doc would probably be in a better position to explain. She mentioned about having the clinics where they're followed up and encouraged to be seen. And we have, with a group of us who look after the association, they do try and target the members of the community who are struggling with sickle disease. And they are followed up by, we have got the nurses and so on. They are followed up. We know who they are, let's put it that way. And we try and follow them up with the respective clinics. But Doc, is there something that has been going on prior to me coming back to Grenada that can help these folks that you're aware of?
I'm sorry, because I'm having rain, so I'm not hearing everything. What did you just say? Can you please repeat?
Yeah.
In terms of the folks who are struggling with sickle, I know we know who they are. The association members know who they are, so they're targeted. So you try and follow them up with the members of the team.
Yes, so
either doctors and follow.
Our clinics are mostly for children. We're trying to figure out the adults and trying to get them to incorporate. And so, if you are an adult who has full-blown sickle cell, we ask people to get in touch with the Sickle Cell Association or offices down on Kirani James, in that building where Green's Garage is, the connection, right? That's where we are. I honestly don't remember the number, but I think it's in the book. And we become a part of the Sickle Cell Association so we can know. We try to facilitate people getting their pneumococcal vaccine every year, which is required. Trust me, people don't get as sick as often. There are less days for students missing school. We try to provide also things like Denise mentioned, hampers for family, try and alleviate the need. Because if you have a child who has sickle cell, most parents might need to stay home a little more often than necessary, than they would like, to help the children. Now with the children getting their medications, the hydroxyurea is available at the health centers. And this is a government clinic that we run with volunteers, basically, right? And so will be the adult clinic. So people can have access to the government pharmacies. And hydroxyurea is that medication is almost always available. So people can get it and have less crisis.
And also there's a mobile phone service that's held by one of the volunteer nurses. So this allows the patients to reach out in an emergency, just in case they need to get some expert advice. So we also provide that service as well.
Okay, wonderful. Now, Doc, when should a patient visit the doctor? Someone with sickle cell?
From your born?
Right. So,
okay.
So you, yeah.
No. Let's put a line. Let's put a line. Mm-hmm. The clinic clinics that are established are mostly pediatric clinics, okay? Meaning clinics for children. We do not yet have an adult clinic, but the children with sickle cell disease who are known, who have been screened at birth and identified, are incorporated into that sickle cell clinic. And so they can attend on a monthly basis or as often as nurse will want to schedule them so they can be seen at least 4 times a year, okay? That is what it is. If you're an adult, you really adults still can go to the regular doctor, the regular community clinic as adults, because they're standardized care. You know, what to do for people with sickle cell disease is standardized, and everybody should know it, including our doctors in our community clinics. So, as regular as possible. Especially as regular as possible to get you back to a good state of health if you have not been attending a clinic, right? If you're not seeing a doctor regularly, your GP can manage you. But, you know, as the Sickle Association does this as a courtesy, as to support people who have this dreaded disease, okay? So go into regularly so you can keep your check your blood count, know what you need to do, and encourage your dietary practices and all the other health practices that you need to do in order to stay well, as often as is necessary, and then as often as requested by your doctor or your nurse once you're stable.
Okay, let's take a telephone call and see who's with us. Doctor. Okay, we apparently lost the caller. We probably took it a little too late. But folks, the number 435-2041. You have any questions you would like to ask or anything you'd like to share with us, you can definitely give us a call. The number again, 435-2041. That's 435-2041. For our friends on our WhatsApp platform, we cannot take WhatsApp calls. You can only type your questions or your comments there. All right, so no WhatsApp calls, we won't be able to take it, but your comments, questions, yes indeed, you can do that. All right, yeah. So Doc, in terms of the symptoms that some people have, for example, and we mentioned them earlier, the swelling of the hands and feet. So you know that you have sickle cell disease. Of course, you don't always get the crisis, but you start feeling a little different, and that's where I was going with the question. At what point in that period you think you need to go? You need to get up and go and see a doctor.
You should go once you're not feeling what is not feeling when you're healthy.
Right, outside of normal.
Outside of normal. It's one of the unfortunate things with people who have diseases like chronic pain and stuff is that they get a little, the threshold gets a little higher and higher, and they forget that, hey, I need to move. Okay? Because you also don't want that you have a clot somewhere that does in an artery that doesn't allow for you to have circulation beyond that, and that the tissue beyond that dies. Okay? You don't want that. Yeah, my chest hurts a little, but I'm accustomed to that. And when you look, you have a big clot in your lung that can cause you to die. Mm-hmm. You don't want that you're having a headache, right? I get headaches every so often. When you look, you have a big clot in your brain and you have a major stroke. Those things can happen. And they can happen in children. It can happen in anybody. You don't want that you're having a problem or my back hurts. When you look, you have a clot in your kidneys. Do you understand? Or clot in the back of your eyes that can cause blindness. So we want people. I don't think that anybody who manages people with sickle cell disease, sickle cell full-blown sickle cell anemia, right, would be upset if you turn up because you don't feel well. It is important that your healthcare provider tries to figure out what is this not feeling well is about, what is it about, and try and alleviate the challenge. identify what it is. Then there's just ordinary anemia now. Your blood count is low, right? And your blood, we get anemia because we eating junk and we're not eating enough greens and stuff, and your blood count drops. Guess what? Women who have heavy bleeding, lose a lot of, have heavy periods and have hemorrhaging, they get anemic, right? You get sick if you've had cancer. You know what it's just to have anemia? You feel very tired. You feel very listless. You don't have the energy to get up and go. You feel weak. And of course, we said people with full blown disease, you can almost identify them. They're different. They're long. Just long, right? I can stretch them out, right? They slow, the joints hurt and stuff. Once your symptoms start, making you even showing themselves, even if they're not serious, I think it's a good time to go. We need to listen to our children. They will look pale, they might look extremely yellow because you have rapid breakdown of these red blood cells. So there's a lot of bilirubin from the breakdown of the hemoglobin, and the child gets yellow. And you see people who have sickle cell disease, they tend to be yellow. That's staining of the sclera and the tissues of the body, right? So you see a child looking very yellow, something is wrong. It might be a baby who can't speak. They're not eating well. They have a fever. Their stools look different. They look darker, or they look lighter. The tummy looks distended, right? Or the child is having difficulty walking because his joints are hurting. You need to take the child to the doctor.
Right. Let's go back to the telephone and see if we get the call. Doctor and call. Good evening. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, caller.
Yes. The doctor mentioned earlier on about hemoglobin. I wanted to ask the doctor, if you have high hemoglobin levels, what does that mean? Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Right. So the caller is asking if you have a high hemoglobin count. What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, some people can have a high hemoglobin. There's some people it's just like that, and also these are people who are a little at risk for having different challenges. The hemoglobin can become lodged in their muscles and in different parts. So these people sometimes you take a little blood from them and bring the hemoglobin down. It can have challenges. They can have challenges. They can have joint pains and feel sick.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not too sure whether they will have breakdown, but very high above. I talk about having high, like 17, 18, 19, 20, those kind of levels. It is a medical condition that usually a doctor discovers, and you feel tired, you feel achy, right? And your doctor will discover it, and you will every so often have to do like a transfusion. They remove a little to the blood to bring it back down.
Okay, right. So let's talk now a bit about the do's and don'ts. People with sickle cell disease. What are some of the things? Do's and don'ts. What are some of the things they should do, and what are some of the things that they should not do? And of course, all with the intention of prolonging life and feeling well. And Mrs. Roberts, you can jump in here anytime.
Yeah.
Well, from our point of view, we try and conduct some workshops for our sicklers, right? Particularly the ones who are working, because of course they're going to need more time off. They're not feeling well, and we need the employers to understand that basically the illness itself, because with the pain, they're anemic, they get excessive pain, they've got swelling in their hands and their feet, frequent infections. They're not going to feel themselves to go to work. So we really try our best to educate the employers as well, so that they can be a little bit more flexible to these folks in terms of coming to work and how often they come to work and that sort of thing.
And the tasks that they do.
And the jobs that they're doing, of course. For the do's, we encourage them to keep hydrated, make sure they have a lot of water intake, so that they can keep the actual blood running through their veins and not clumping and sticking together and causing problems in their joints, which is the sickle, as we say, it's pointy at both ends, so they stick together and they form these painful areas in the joints. I mean, all the organs are affected. Your lungs, your liver, your kidney, your everything is affected with sickle disease. And the brain. I mean, we just basically try our best to encourage them to try and live well, have a good diet, some form of exercise, but they keep on top of infections if they're not feeling well, see somebody early. Don't wait until, they've got a full-blown infection, whether it's, the cold. Now we're going into the carnival season, so people are there's a carnival flu, I think, that comes in afterwards.
Yeah,
and just basically
too much mix up.
Trying to get people to care for themselves a bit better. And swellings of the hands and the feet, you just basically try and say to them, look, get help and get help early. Don't wait until, things get out of hand to then try and seek help. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Eyes as well. Get the eyes, your dental. I mean, all the organs get affected, isn't it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So besides all of that, I think it's very important that people are just aware that that's a possibility in our environment. So education is very important. So there are people here who I don't have sickle cell in my immediate family, but I have relatives who have sickle cell disease, right? So I'm aware, and families need to know and be understanding. The child is not lazy, or the guy is not lazy. Just really don't feel well. So we need to be aware as a population where 1 in 15 person will actually carry the gene. Okay, we actually need to know this is a possibility. And Denise mentioned the stuff about more time off. Our labor laws have to be flexible for people who have other diseases. We have to understand that there are people with certain long-standing chronic diseases who need a little more leniency and a little more facilitation. Because at the end of the day, you really want people to just be able to live as normal a life as possible. So if you have a young man who has sickle cell disease who works in your shop, you're not going to put him out in the sun to sweep the yard because he's doing, a basic job. You might put him inside the air conditioner to stock the shelves or to wipe the counter. Yeah, he can take out the garbage and come back inside, but you're not going to have him outside stacking groceries outside when the provisions come in, stacking them on the tray outside in the yard, or sweeping or pushing the cart from the supermarket to go over to the bus park. No, you have to be lenient, and our employers are going to have to be educated about that. Everybody's going to have to understand that people just have challenges, and we can facilitate them by doing X, Y, Z, and they can be equally productive as anybody else. Right? The other thing is knowledge. If I know I have sickle cell, I think I'd want to make sure that my partner, with whom I would like to create a life, does not have, because I want to give our offspring the best options for a good life, and that's only fair. Like I say, we don't do as much screening in other populations. I know, like in Massachusetts, for example, they do a lot. It's almost obligatory that you have premarital counseling and testing and all the rest of it. So as we become more and more advanced, hopefully that will be one of the things. Maybe that's one of the things that Sickle Cell Association can encourage. Counseling, marital counseling, health counseling, right, for people who intend to form a marital union. And of course, the nutrition component is very important. Yes, your child must have folic acid all the time, or the adults must have folic acid. We do not give iron. You can take iron and you have anemia. Mm-hmm. To sickle cell, people with sickle cell disease we don't give them, because you have this rapid rate and it's not going to work and it has more negative effect for the person than for someone who has regular anemia. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure they take folic acid, which helps in the building up of the cells as well, and the whole integrity of the red blood cell. You want to make sure that they drink a lot of fluids. Why? Denise mentioned, you want to keep the blood as fluid as possible. You want to make sure that they eat a lot of, take their vitamins, and they eat food with protein to help to build that hemoglobin part of it, that they get appropriate rest, that they take care of their feet, that they recognize when I am not well. Those are the things you want to ensure, right? And you want to have support for families, right? Because some families just don't understand. In our environment, we have all kind of reasons why people sick enough, including supernatural reasons. When in truth, the child just has sickle cell. So try imagine the child starts getting swollen at 6 months when he starts changing from his fetal cells and having sickle cells. It's crazy, right? So we want to make sure that our children can be integrated into schools by making sure that they get their vaccines, they get their medication, whatever medications they have to get, and they understand what it is. I have to have water. Teacher understands that he will drink water in class and I need to go to the bathroom a little more often. Those are the things you want to ensure.
Education.
Right. We have a caller on the line. Let's go to the telephone. Doctor, call. Good evening. Hello.
Hello, good night, doctor.
Yes, good evening, caller.
I've been watching your show and listening. Would liquid chlorophyll be something that you would recommend for patients? I have a friend.
Caller, liquid what? We didn't get that.
Liquid chlorophyll.
Liquid chlorophyll. Okay.
Liquid chlorophyll, right? So I have a friend. He has been, he has had sickle cells for as long as he can remember, right? And moving from Grenada to the United States, he started to use something called liquid chlorophyll, right? And right now he hasn't seen a doctor in about 3 years, and his health is drastically improved by using this liquid chlorophyll. So I want to know if the doctor is aware of this treatment and if it's something that she would recommend for patients.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. Yep. Doc, liquid chlorophyll.
I'm not aware of liquid chlorophyll as a type. Is not something we use here. It comes with chlorophyll, of course, which is that green component in plants. Chlorophyll is a chemical that gives leafy vegetables, green vegetables, their colors, also as a supplement in liquid form. I guess we tell patients to take folic acid. Maybe liquid chlorophyll has a high concentration of folic acid, but caller, I'm not informed. And I will not like to mislead you. So I guess we both have to go to the internet and see. We within the Sickle Cell Association and the Medical Association, those of us who practice medicine here, do not engage in other optional practices. Not that there's anything wrong with it, we just don't know. So that's the most I can tell you. This is something for me to learn as well, so thank you.
Yeah, and other further research
also, hold on. You see, one of the things, if a friend migrated, in the time, unfortunately for him, his experience will be different from the children that we see now. Because the children we see now go to the clinics and they don't get sick, and they have been basically well. They spend more time in school, they have less time in the hospital, a lot less time in the hospital. And soon when we start to do research and look at our numbers, we'll be able to share how just having access to a clinic and the kind of support that the children require, how that has improved their whole participation in regular life, right? And has taken them out of being sick to people to just being people, in other words, being well but having a disease. Because that is what our objective is, to maintain wellness. And which is what I'm hearing this caller saying, that his friend now has been well. But I guess there are other components of his lifestyle that he has been encouraged to practice and is doing well. So kudos to him. And thank you for bringing that point up. This is something I'm going to have to read.
Yeah, I think we'll have to look into it, isn't it? Because
actually, there is a site that I use for this program in particular. It's called Healthline, and they do have some information that has been researched that shows some positive things with that liquid chlorophyll. But it's something, of course, that we can look at. Usually, that site they usually they would give you the information of any kind of studies or research that has been done on things like that. So it is, I guess it's something that can be considered. Right. So we're getting close to wrap up time, but let's talk a little bit about living with sickle cell. We mentioned it earlier. So you may have a situation in a home where people with sickle cells, you may have one that is probably a little more ill than the others, and of course you have to support, you have to care for them and all of that. I am not sure, someone was asking about the societal stigma. I am not sure I've ever heard a lot about it as compared to other medical conditions, but Ms. Roberts, Doc, you all can speak to that if you have experienced it and the support.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, what I've seen at the health clinics that we've been running, the health fairs, most people are aware of somebody who has sickle, and that would be the disease. Most people with sickle trait just get on with normal living. They'll be a bit tired and they'll be a little bit anemic, but they seem to have a fairly straightforward life, so to say, looking after themselves. But if you have the disease, you need more care, you need more attention from your doctor, you need to look after yourself a bit better. And in terms of the stigma, from what we saw at the health fairs, what I've seen at the health fairs at Lassages, at the NI's building in St. George's, at the one outside the cruise ship terminal, people know about sickle, but I don't think there's a stigma attached to it per se that I've noticed. Mm-hmm. It is what it is, as it says on the tin, and people try their best to look after themselves. But if you've got the trait, it's a case where you live a fairly straightforward life with some hiccups here and there. But the disease, if you have a sickle disease, somebody with sickle disease, they end up having crisis, they're in pain, infection, the visual problems, they're just not very well. I mean, Doc, what's been your experience with it?
So I have three things I want to say. One, that stigma tends to emanate from the caregiving population, nurses, doctors, and other people. So I think it's a good time for all of us to become more, I'm sorry for being so one, there's just all the insects flying around and it's very hot, I'm sorry. It's time for us as caregivers, as healthcare providers, to ensure that we understand better, not only to support persons who have whatever disease, in this case sickle cell, and equated families, but to also create tolerance by our own behaviors, right? We need to explain to people who worry. One of the challenges, number two, that a lot of people with sickle cell have that may create a little is because a lot of our younger sicklers have had ulcers, have had a sore on their foot. Mm-hmm. And you know how all of us feel about people with sores on their feet. I think people need to understand, if we can understand why these sores come about and how we can treat them. Some people need to have surgery. They need to have a skin graft put on that comes back if they had prolonged ulcers that aren't healing. And there are other methods that we can use. So I think that might be one of the things that might push off people and might create a lot of societal, sidelining for people with sickle cell. But the more we tell people and the more they understand, I think the more the tolerance will grow. The more we tell people this is just another illness. There's nothing wrong that somebody has an ulcer. Sometimes it heals anyway. And the other thing is, once we can practice, we can understand from before and advise people as a possible outcome for your children. Two, once we can start seeing our children very early and enhance the quality of life that they live, we will prevent these complications like ulcers, like having regular breakdown and of cells, and having constant anemia and fatigue, and these thin children who seem to have malnutrition, and children don't want to play with them, and they bully them and they put them on the sidelines and stuff. So I think education is very important. I think carrying on our clinics is very, very, very important. Having more volunteers, people who want to learn about sickle cell and support people with sickle cell in their community. It is something that is in our population. A lot of us just don't know, but it is one of our realities. I think once we can educate the population, people become more tolerant. In 1986, we were throwing bleach on people who had HIV. Now you don't even realize that we still have HIV and we have unprotected sex. So we need to get to a point where we have tolerance because we have education, understanding, and yes, we have medications. There are other things that are being researched, like there's a case of a person whose sickle cell was turned back, but that's genetic therapy and all the rest of it. That's still a long way off for everybody. But in the interim, what we do is to make sure we don't have kids with sickle cell, we can avoid it, and that if a child is born with sickle cell disease or trait, that we're able to get involved in the facilities, in the programs that exist, like with Sickle Cell Association, the clinic, and adults too can come into the clinic, and people can live a healthy life. Then the stigma will disappear.
I must say the health clinics that we've had, the folks that we've chatted to, they know of somebody who had sickle, but they know of the ones having the crisis and not feeling very well. But somebody with the trait, they just live a fairly normal life without too many, ups and downs along the way. But it's a disease that is the real critical thing. This is what we're saying. It's not something that you can catch from anybody. If you're born with it, you're with it till you die. And then we try and, support and facilitate. And, we look for new members if people are interested in joining the association. We do look for new members to come in and, volunteers. It's a voluntary thing. We try and do our best to educate as much as possible. And as I said, the more health fairs that we do at the moment, as I said, we've seen 230, let me just get my figures again, 238. Yeah. 238 we screened so far, plus there was a clinic, there was a health fair today, so there'll be a few more.
And they probably screened like 30 at least today. I was there today.
Okay, and then from those we've seen, a small percentage of people with sickle cell traits, and 2 with their full-blown disease. So we continue to educate people as much as we can about this illness, because it's not a nice.
It's our reality.
Yeah.
All right. So we're almost out of time, and so Doc, let's take a minute or two just to sort of summarize and wrap for this evening. So Doc, we'll start with you, and we'll then go back to Ms. Roberts for final comments before we close.
Okay, so sickle cell, and I'm going to speak of disease. It's a reality. It's a very harsh reality for families. And remember that if you have sickle cell disease, there's somebody in your family or a couple of people in your family who have sickle cell trait at least. So it's something that is part of our heritage. We have seen research start with a Grenadian, and it shouldn't end there. Hopefully, the Sickle Cell Association and whichever other agency, whether it's St. George's University, our main education center on the island, or the Ministry of Health, whoever, will be able to engage in sickle cell in sickle cell research, so that we can build programs for ourselves. Because I have seen people who have full-blown disease who are quite fine, who have had children. I know a lady who has had 4 kids. I mean, big people who don't have any children. She's had 4 children. And like I told the gentleman I met recently, and a couple of other people who I've met. The bottom line is that it is our reality. Every Grenadian has the right to be well. Every Grenadian has a right to enjoy a healthy life. So we will have to advocate as a Sickle Cell Association, as clinicians, as myself, as people who provide healthcare, to ensure, one, that we can have education and counseling, and encourage people who know they have a history to be counseled before, so that families know what the outcome of their children can be, whether or not, because you're born with this, all right? 2, that we have facilities for caring for the people who have already been diagnosed with sickle cell disease. That we can, as far as possible, enhance their quality of life, make it as close to normal as possible. Children must go to school, they must have recreation, they must have good food, they must be able to exercise, they must be able to do games, go to the beach, play with fun, everything, okay? And try and remove those encumbrances, the things that will stop them, all the mitigating factors, because I have a pain today because of this. There is a way to deal with it. And pain, being the major feature, we know we can contain pain by ensuring that we properly hydrated, that we take our medication, that we get our shots when we need to get our shots, and that we recognize when something is going wrong. We hope also that policy at a governmental level, that we would ensure that workers, people can work, people can live and work like everybody else, that there will be labor laws that will facilitate the challenges that people have when they have sickle cell disease. And hopefully we can become the 100,000 of us, or 120, whatever we are, can become a beacon and an example based on the history that we've had and the heritage that we have acquired, right? That Grenada is the place where sickle cell disease is recognized and fully supported.
Right. Mrs. Roberts, your closing comments?
Well, I'd just like to endorse all of the above from Doc. And to say that in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, we try and facilitate as much of the testing as we can for all the babies born in Grenada from birth, right? All of them. And we're not leaving out Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Yeah, we're looking at the whole tri-island state in terms of what we do. To try and, as you said, be that beacon in the Caribbean to say that we're on top of this in terms of what we do and how we do it, knowing the heritage from Walter Clement, who basically, left his mark and is resting in peace at Marley Cemetery in St. Patrick's. So thank you for the opportunity, and we hope we've been able to pass on as much information as we can. As I said, we do have a health fair at the Foodland car park on the 28th. Please come along if you're able to. I think we start at 12 until 5. Okay. So more educational information. We've got leaflets, we've got posters, and we also have a 10-point plan, a 10-point 10-point instructions and advice that we do ask for
information sheet.
Who can basically take a shot of it and send it on to their people in their circle, so they can actually see what are the 10 key points in terms of looking for people with sickle. So we continue to do our best to try and educate as much as we can.
Okay, wonderful. And as we close, one last question. Someone said, Doc, good night. Is there an age limit for sickle cell patients, or with the right care, can their lives be prolonged? Doc, I think I can answer that. Can I?
There's no age limit. This is a lifelong disease. And what we're saying, the earlier you start having interventions and support, the healthier you can be as an adult, because you will always have the potential for having severe illness. What we're trying to do is to make sure that this doesn't happen. There's no limit. And like I said, we're trying to start once the adult clinics are started, I'm sure the ministry will make, or the Sickle Cell Association will make a public announcement as to people who have sickle cell. And like I said, we're screening now, so we're finding adults. The other thing is that men, since you're not going to get pregnant, we're going to ask you especially, or young men, get screened, know your status. It's very important that you know what you're dealing with. And I wanted to mention one severe complication of sickle cell disease. People with full-blown disease. It's called priapism. And again, it has to do with all of those cells clumping together, but they clump together in the penis, causing a prolonged erection. And so it's very important in the male that you can avoid this unfortunate complication, right? We talk about strokes, we talk about the heart attacks, but in the case of the males, having clumping in the penis can cause an erection that doesn't go down. You may have to have surgery, and in that surgery, it is very likely that you can't have a natural erection again. So it's very, very important. If you're a male and you think you may have sickle cell, that you get seen and you can have support that will help you to not have that. I mean, there's medication, there's hydroxyurea, which really minimizes the clumping, but at least you can get support. If you are a male with sickle cell disease and you have that, you see this has happened, find a doctor as early as possible, because the possibility of reversal to normal is greater if you're younger, if this condition is recognize.
Earlier.
You don't wait and say, Lord, I think from 2 days ago. No. Once you realize an erection doesn't go down. And men will have erections in the morning. That's a very normal part of a man's life. But if it's there and it's not going down, find a doctor, especially if you know you have sickle cell.
Okay, wonderful indeed. Well, Doc, thank you very much, Mrs. Roberts. I thank you so very much for, accepting the invitation to be on the program. It was indeed a pleasure having you. And I must encourage you to continue working at the association together with your colleagues to provide the support that you're providing. You did mention you can give the number to people who want to contact. You can do so, the number for the association.
That's here to hand. It's 1 minute. The number is 458-6399.
Right, 458-6399.
458-6399. Yeah.
Right.
458-6399. Yeah.
And Godfrey, as usual, I want to remind people that there are other things happening out there besides sickle cell this week. I want to remind people that it's still raining. There's a lot of colds and stuff going around. A lot of flu. There are a lot of mosquitoes, so please protect ourselves and our children from dengue by limiting the amount of mosquitoes that are bred. Clean up your yard. Make sure you don't have stagnant clear water. Kill the mosquitoes however you must. But please protect our children. Give our children long sleeve clothing. I know it's very hot. Also, because of the heat, the excessive heat, please make sure that your elderly and your children are properly hydrated. Coconut water works magic. Water is good, but please make sure that everybody is appropriately hydrated. Remember that older people do not drink simply because their thirst reflex is not as great. Please make sure that our older citizens, especially when you notice that the behavior starts changing, please make sure that they give them rehydration.
Of water.
Right?
Okay.
Coconut water is great, but you can give water. Make sure that they drink the water. But you have to make liquids and ice and give them. It's going to be tedious, but please make sure that our children, those are the extreme and the extremes of the lifespan, children and our adults, our older people are rehydrated.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. So thank you very much, Doc. Thank you, folks, for staying with us. It was indeed a pleasure. Your questions, your comments, we do welcome it. And of course, you can join us next Tuesday at the same time for another Doctor on Call. Thank you very much, and do have a good evening. All the best.
Thank you very much. Bye. Goodbye.
Diabetes, AIDS, cancer,